Have you ever heard of Truganini, often considered the last full-blooded Aboriginal Tasmanian? Born around the year 1812, Truganini was a remarkable woman from the Palawa community of Tasmania, an island off the southern coast of Australia. Her life was one of resilience and survival in a time of great upheaval and tragedy for the indigenous people of Australia. Growing up, Truganini was witness to the brutal effects of colonization. The once peaceful life of the Palawa people was shattered by the arrival of British settlers who brought with them disease, conflict, and violence. Despite the immense hardships she faced, Truganini fought to preserve her culture and protect her people. Truganini's story is often framed around her being the last of her kind. This label, however, is not without controversy. While she is often referred to as the last full-blooded Tasmanian Aboriginal, it's important to note that her people, the Palawa, are still very much alive today. This narrative of the last of her kind is one that has been imposed by outsiders, and it can overshadow Truganini's own story of strength and survival. Truganini's life was not just one of survival, but also resistance. In the face of colonization, she stood tall, refusing to let her culture be erased. She became a symbol of the Palawa people's resilience, a beacon of hope in a time of great despair. But Truganini's story is also a stark reminder of the devastating effects of colonial violence. It is a testament to the atrocities committed against indigenous people, not just in Tasmania, but around the world. Truganini's life was a testament to survival against all odds. Her story, though marked by tragedy, is also one of unyielding spirit and resilience. As we delve deeper into her life, let's remember that she was not just a figure of the past, but an enduring symbol of strength and survival. Truganini, the woman, the survivor, the symbol of resistance. Her story is one that continues to resonate today. Born around 1812, Truganini's early life was marked by conflict and loss. Truganini was a member of the Palawa people, the indigenous community of Tasmania. Her childhood was anything but ordinary, as her people were caught in the crossfire of European colonization. Growing up on Bruny Island, she was part of a vibrant culture that had thrived for tens of thousands of years. However, the arrival of British settlers in the early 19th century marked the beginning of a tumultuous period for Truganini and her people. The settlers brought with them unfamiliar diseases, which decimated the indigenous population, and a hunger for land, which led to violent skirmishes. Truganini's family was not spared from these conflicts. Her mother was killed by sailors. Her two sisters were abducted and sold as slaves, and her betrothed was murdered by whalers. By the time she was just 17, Truganini had suffered more loss and heartache than most people do in a lifetime. But Truganini was not just a victim of these circumstances. She was a survivor, known for her intelligence, courage, and resilience. Despite the immense challenges she faced, she refused to give in to despair. Instead, she used her knowledge of the land and the sea to navigate the turbulent times. Truganini's early life was a testament to the strength and spirit of the Palawa people. Despite the violence and disruption brought on by colonization, they fought to preserve their way of life and to protect their land. Truganini, with her tenacity and courage, was a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. These early experiences were not just personal tragedies, but also symbolized the broader struggle of indigenous communities against colonial violence. They set the stage for Truganini's later life and struggles, shaping her into the resilient figure she would become, one who would fiercely resist the erasure of her people and their culture. These early experiences set the stage for Truganini's later life and struggles. Truganini's path crossed with a man named George Augustus Robinson, a significant figure in her life. Let's delve into the intricacies of their relationship. George Augustus Robinson, a bricklayer turned missionary, arrived on the scene with what he called the friendly mission. His goal? To civilize and Christianize the indigenous population and move them to a settlement on Flinders Island. Robinson claimed to have a peaceful approach, and Truganini, seeing the escalating conflict and violence against her people, decided to join him. Now, it's important to remember that this was a time when the indigenous population was being hunted and their lands seized. Truganini saw Robinson's mission as a possible way to safeguard her people. She, along with a small group, journeyed with Robinson across Tasmania, acting as a mediator and guide, helping him negotiate with various indigenous groups. Their relationship, however, was far from simple. Robinson claimed to be a protector of the indigenous people, but his actions tell a different story. He used Truganini's language skills and cultural knowledge to further his mission, while offering her little more than basic survival in return. Truganini was caught in a complex web of manipulation and dependence. Robinson's friendly mission was anything but friendly. The relocation to Flinders Island was disastrous. The conditions were harsh, and disease and despair swept through the settlement. Truganini watched as her people, including her husband, succumbed one by one. Yet, Truganini persevered. She adapted and survived, just as she had done all her life. In Robinson, she found a means to navigate through the chaos of her world. She used her relationship with him as a tool for survival, even as he used her for his mission. Their relationship was a complex one, marked by manipulation, dependence, and survival. Truganini's story with Robinson serves as a stark reminder of the harsh realities faced by Indigenous people during this time. It's a testament to her resilience and determination to protect her people, even in the most challenging of circumstances. By the 1830s, Truganini and the few remaining Palawa people were moved to Flinders Island. This was a time of great upheaval, a period when the very fabric of their existence was being torn apart. The journey to Flinders Island was not a pleasant one. They had to leave their ancestral lands behind, lands that had been their home for millennia. Flinders Island, though beautiful in its own right, was a far cry from the lush, vibrant landscapes of their homeland. The conditions were harsh, the weather was unpredictable, and the soil was not suitable for traditional farming practices. The Palawa people, who once thrived in harmony with nature, were now struggling to survive. Life on Flinders Island was a test of endurance for Truganini and her people. They had to adapt to a new way of life that was foreign to them. They were forced to abandon their traditional ways and conform to the lifestyle imposed by the colonial authorities. The impact of this forced relocation was devastating. The population of the Palawa people dwindled rapidly due to diseases brought by the Europeans, malnutrition, and the harsh conditions of life on the island. Truganini, once a vibrant young woman full of life, was now witnessing the slow and painful demise of her people. But in the face of this adversity, Truganini's spirit remained unbroken. She continued to fight for her people's rights, standing as a beacon of hope in the darkest of times. Her resilience in the face of such hardship is a testament to her strength and determination. This move to Flinders Island marked a significant and tragic turning point in Truganini's life and the history of the Palawa people. It was the end of an era, a time when the Palawa people's way of life was forever changed. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter marked by resistance, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of a woman who refused to be defeated. This marked a significant and tragic turning point in Truganini's life and the history of the Palawa people. The story of Truganini and the Palawa people is a reminder of the enduring human spirit in the face of adversity. It's a tale of resilience, of survival, and of a woman who stood tall in the face of overwhelming odds. Truganini's later years were spent in Hobart, where she lived until her death in 1876. In these years, Truganini, like many Indigenous Australians of her time, faced considerable hardship. Despite the adversity, she remained a resilient figure, living each day with the strength and courage that had characterized her entire life. Towards the end of her life, Truganini made a request that would prove controversial. She asked that upon her death her body be cremated to avoid it being dissected and studied by scientists, as was the unfortunate fate of many Indigenous Australians at the time. Truganini, who had witnessed the desecration of her people's graves in the name of scientific curiosity, wished to protect her own remains from this fate. However, after her death on the 8th of May in 1876, her request was disregarded. Her body was buried at the Female Factory in Hobart, a former penal colony, and later exhumed by the Royal Society of Tasmania. Her skeleton was displayed in the Tasmanian Museum for nearly a century, a grim reminder of the often dehumanizing treatment of Indigenous Australians during this period of history. The controversy surrounding Truganini's burial sparked a long and arduous battle for the repatriation of her remains. It was not until nearly a century later, in 1976, that her wishes were finally honored. Her remains were cremated and scattered in the D'Entrecasteaux Channel, as she had wished. Truganini's story is a testament to the resilience and strength of Indigenous Australians in the face of adversity. Her life, marked by resistance and survival, offers a poignant reminder of the brutal reality of colonial violence, yet also of the enduring spirit of the Palawa people. In death, as in life, Truganini's story was marked by controversy and conflict. Yet her legacy continues to reverberate, a stark reminder of our past and an enduring call for respect and recognition of Indigenous cultures and histories. Truganini's legacy goes beyond the label of the last full-blooded Aboriginal Tasmanian. She was a woman of formidable strength and resilience, a survivor who navigated through the most turbulent times in her people's history. Yet, her story is much more than a tale of survival. It's a testament to the enduring spirit of Indigenous peoples in the face of adversity. Truganini's life was marked by the struggle of the Palawa people against colonial violence. But it's essential to remember that her story doesn't end with her. The Palawa people, just like other Indigenous communities around the globe, continue to confront the legacies of colonialism. They strive to preserve their culture, language, and traditions, fighting for recognition and justice in a world that often overlooks them. Efforts to honor Truganini's memory are woven into this ongoing struggle. For many years, her remains were displayed in a museum, a tragic echo of the way Indigenous peoples were often treated as curiosities rather than human beings. It wasn't until the late 20th century that her remains were finally returned to her homeland and properly laid to rest. This act of repatriation was a significant step towards acknowledging and making amends for past wrongs. Today, Truganini's story is taught in Australian schools, reminding us of a dark chapter in the nation's history. But it's also a story of resilience and resistance, a narrative that challenges us to reflect on the past and consider its implications for the present. As we remember Truganini, let's also remember the broader context of her life. She was not just a victim of colonialism, but a woman of strength and resilience who resisted it. Her story is a poignant reminder of the resilience of Indigenous peoples in the face of adversity. Let's honor her memory by acknowledging this resilience, by learning from the past, and by striving for a future where Indigenous cultures are respected and celebrated. Truganini's story is a poignant reminder of the resilience of Indigenous peoples in the face of adversity. So, what can we learn from Truganini's life and the history of the Palawa people? As we ponder this question, let's take a moment to reflect on the themes of survival, resistance, and resilience that are so deeply entwined in Truganini's narrative. Her story is not simply about the hardships she faced, but also about the strength and determination she embodied. Despite the immense challenges posed by colonial violence and dispossession, Truganini and the Palawa people continued to persevere and resist. Truganini's life serves as a poignant reminder of the harsh realities faced by Indigenous communities during the colonial era. It's important, though, to remember that these communities were not just passive victims of colonialism. Like Truganini, many Indigenous people resisted and fought against the injustices they faced. Their stories of resilience and survival are a testament to their indomitable spirit. We must also consider the importance of acknowledging and remembering the history of Indigenous peoples. For too long, these histories have been overlooked or forgotten. This is not just an issue of the past, it's an issue of the present and the future. The erasure of Indigenous histories is a form of violence in itself, one that continues to have repercussions today. To truly honor Truganini's legacy, we must commit to remembering her story and the stories of all Indigenous peoples. This means learning about the rich cultures, histories, and languages of Indigenous communities. It means confronting the difficult realities of colonial violence and dispossession. And it means acknowledging the ongoing struggles of Indigenous peoples for justice and recognition. As we reflect on Truganini's life, let's also reflect on our own role in this process. We all have a part to play in remembering and acknowledging the history of Indigenous peoples. This might involve educating ourselves about Indigenous histories, supporting Indigenous struggles for justice, or simply taking the time to listen to and learn from Indigenous voices. In the end, Truganini's story is not just a story of one woman or one community. It's a story that speaks to the broader history of colonialism and Indigenous survival. It's a story that challenges us to think critically about the past and to consider its implications for the present and the future. Remember, history is not just about the past. It's about how we understand the past, how we interpret it in the present, and how we use it to envision the future. As we reflect on Truganini's life and the history of the Palawa people, let's commit to a vision of the future that acknowledges and honors the resilience and survival of Indigenous peoples. Truganini's story, like the stories of all Indigenous peoples, is a crucial part of our shared history. It is a story of survival, resistance, and resilience.